as midterm season heats up, we have a lot of allegations like slavery being on the ballot for voters and democracy being on the ballot, and the simple majority might do it wrong. So democracy is great unless you do it the way that we don't like, but we'll talk about that, what that means, and where we go with that. A series of militiamen in Arizona are on the hot seat this week because they were apparently voter intimidating by just being there with weapons concealed. So we'll go over some of that and what that means and where we go with that. Marco Rubio's canvasser is attacked while going down into Hialeah, as we're told that Republicans are not welcome down there, and Charlie Crist and Ron DeSantis go together in a debate. It sounds to me like DeSantis won, but all the paid Biden shills over on Twitter tell us that Crist clearly mopped the floor. We'll go over some of the comparisons and see what happened with that and see what you think. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome into midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a lot to go over here today. The midterm rhetoric is ramping up too, and I mean some of these crazy stories, just like what happened in Florida where the canvasser is literally beaten, needing jaw reconstruction surgery. I don't know if I can show any of these pictures without getting age restricted over on YouTube, but we will see what it is that we can. If it kind of does look like we're going to be going too far off of that, I will click off of that article. But yeah, we'll go over some of that. The debate, I didn't get to hear any of that. I didn't know it was happening until after the fact, until I started seeing the paid shills like, Charlie Crist wiped the floor with Ron DeSantis. I didn't see any of that prior to that, so we will be talking about that. We've got some video. We've got some of the, the usual CN 5 takeaways. There was actually one other thing that I wanted to put up on the stack today because it is Tuesday, and I think this is the last Tuesday before we go over to the polls, so I do want to go over the latest polls and some of the major aggregates that are going on here too. So we'll put that up right after finance before we go in and start talking about slavery being on the ballot. Oh my God, you guys. Slavery, literal slavery is on the ballot. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about a lot of stuff over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, KTZed over on Twitter, PJ Patriot, The No Gimmicks Podcast, and Mr. Behavior if you're on any other platform. A good group of people who are out there to bring you news, culture, pop culture, by the common man, for the common man. So go check all those great people out, and we will be looking into what's happening with the news, and we're going to start today with the Dow, as we always do. Let's get the live chat up. Let me see what you guys are doing here. And always, don't be shy. If you guys have something that you want to say, I do read all the live chat. after the show. I don't catch it live on air. Like, if there's a major technical issue or something, I can usually see it up there, and you guys have steered me in the right direction before. But as far as reacting and going live on the air, no, I don't do that on the show because we got a lot of information to go over and a little bit of time to do so. But I do write down your names and give you a special thank you at the end of the week for coming in and supporting the program. So, without further ado, let's get started, starting with the Dow. The Dow spent another day up. After a major spike and another tumble at the beginning, it did claw its way back up, bringing itself up to 31,499.62 on the close yesterday. That is significantly higher than its previous close, so we'll continue to watch that and see what happens with that. I am always a little bit concerned, especially with earnings season, and the fact that, we're going to get recessionary data at some point here. At some point, they're going to tell us whether or not what the numbers were, and I'm a little surprised that they haven't yet. I don't know if they're actually trying to hold this out until after the midterms, but typically by the 12th, we usually get that. Actually, I want to see if we did get the numbers and they just glossed over them because they sucked. The estimate. They haven't given the good numbers yet, but or the full numbers yet, but it looks like they're actually estimating a 2.9% growth. I don't buy it. I really don't. But we actually don't have any number. China's GDP growth is out. They dropped that number, but they haven't dropped our numbers yet, which kind of tells me that this is probably not going to be good, but we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. Looking at the Bitcoin for the morning. I'm going to make sure we keep the audio up there because we've got a lot of video to watch with this. Looking at the Bitcoin is at 19,293.20 US dollars. That is down on the day, $37 US dollars and 20 US cents, or about 0.19%. It looks like it's just been kind of roller coastering and whipsawing between a very, very narrow margin, about a $100 margin. Well, that's helpful. Gotta love to hear that, right in the middle of everything. Yeah, sort of a narrow whipsaw margin between $100 here, so it's kind of, I want to say it's steady. I mean, the numbers look big, but I mean, the waves look big. Let me rephrase that. But they're going through a very small margin, so this is actually kind of steady at this point. And it does look like there was a fairly significant growth yesterday that kind of settled itself back down and just kept bouncing like the bouncing ball. So that's what we see coming off the Bitcoin. On the gas prices in Madison, it does look like there is some decline on those gas prices. I know that I filled up yesterday at $3.39, which was a miracle. For some reason, down by where I live, the gas is actually lower than it is in Madison, and that almost never happens. Looking in at those prices, the Amoco on the Isthmus is at $3.46. The Quick Trip outside the Isthmus is at $3.50. $3.50 on the north side Quick Trip. The BP out on the far east side going out of town is at $3.59. I know which BP that is now. I thought about that after a while. I'm like, do I know that one? Yeah, I know that one. If you're rocketing through Madison, right before you get to the 90 and 94 split, if you're coming up from 90 and 39, that's the one that you can see right there from the interstate. Out on the west side, we've got 350, 350, 340 on the far west side, so a little bit of a mixed bag, but it does look like it's steadily coming down. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Futures fall as Coca-Cola, General Motors report earnings, Microsoft earnings next. From Scott Latonin, Dow Futures dropped 180 points Tuesday morning as blue chips, 3M, and Coca-Cola reported their quarterly earnings results. Next up, Microsoft earnings are due out after the close. Dow stocks, 3M, and Coca-Cola reported Tuesday, General Motors, Halliburton, Raytheon Technologies, and UPS are also among the key reporters Tuesday morning. Triple M dropped 2.8 after missing revenue estimates and lowering its full-year outlook. Coca-Cola jumped 2.8 after posting better-than-expected earnings results and sales results. GM rallied 3.4 in pre-market trade, while Halliburton was up nearly 2%. Raytheon dipped 0.5 after its earnings results, while UPS stock jumped 3%. Why did Raytheon drop? In all seriousness, how did Raytheon drop at this point? Because, I mean, all that they do is toe the line, and they're selling weapons left and right over to Ukraine. And Halliburton actually came up. That's interesting. Tesla ticked down around 1% Tuesday, while the Dow Jones tech leaders Apple and Microsoft were mixed ahead of today's stock market open. AutoZone, Cardinal Health, Eli Lilly, Texas Roadhouse, as well as Dow Stocks, Merck, and United Health Group are among the top stocks to watch. Keep in mind, the new stock market rally is the perfect time for investors to put their watch list into action and to hone their pyramiding technique. Young rallies, particularly those fighting bear markets, often fail. Pyramiding provides a method of moving into stock positions incrementally in order to minimize risk to capital. Cardinal and Texas Roadhouse are IBD leaderboard stocks. United Health was featured in this week's Stocks Nearby Zone column, along with 3 other top stock ideas. On the futures, ahead of Tuesday's opening bell, Dow futures fell 0.6, while the S&P moved down 0.45. The Nasdaq fell 0.2 in morning action. Among the ETFs, the Nasdaq 100 tracker, Invesco QQQ Trust, traded down 0.2, and the SPDR, S&P 500, fell 0.45. The 10-year yield ticked lower to 4.16%. Tuesday morning on Monday, the 10-year Treasury yield rose to 4.23%, settling at its highest level since June of 2008. Meanwhile, U.S. oil prices declined more than 1% Tuesday, adding to Monday's slight losses. West Texas Intermediate futures traded near $83 a barrel, so there is a good chance that we might see a somewhat meaningful drop in gas prices before we get to the midterms at $83 a barrel. We'll continue to watch this and see what happens. We have just a little over a week left, so we will see where we go. Let's grab one from Yahoo Finance, talking about the housing market, and then we will look at the polls. Housing market activity is crashing, and it threatens to push the U.S. into a recession just like it did in 81 and 2008. And that is, of course, following the fact that we had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth already. From Lance Lambert. The go-to line from this year from analysts and economists alike is that the Fed will push until something breaks. Increasingly, it's looking like that something might be the weakening U.S. housing market. Vegas is one of the leading indicators for home price action in the housing market. Like we saw in 2008 and the recent frenzy, we are absolutely feeling the heat here. The buyer pool has, for the most part, dried up. Kristen Riffle, a real estate agent in Las Vegas, tells Fortune. But it's not just bubbly markets like Vegas and Boise that are feeling the pain. This housing downturn is picking up steam nationwide. In fact, as of last week, mortgage purchase applications are down 38% on a year-over-year basis. That marks the lowest reading since 2014. Simply put, housing activity is crashing. Let's be clear, this crash is in housing activity, or as the Fed Chair Jerome Powell calls it, a difficult correction, didn't appear out of thin air. It's by design. The Federal Reserve flipped into inflation-fighting mode this spring with hopes that elevated interest rates would cause activity to slump in rate-sensitive sectors like housing. The Fed's reasoning for slowing the housing market boils down to 2 words: demand destruction. Historically speaking, mortgage rates spike as soon as central banks go into inflation-fighting mode. The mortgage rate shock causes sales for both existing and new homes to fall as builders cut back demand for both commodities, like lumber and durable goods like refrigerators, then declines. It causes a real estate and construction layoff. Those economic contractions then quickly spread throughout the rest of the economy and, in theory, help to weaken the labor market and tame high inflation. Yeah, it's called stagflation. It's cyclical, and there's really no way to claw our way back out of it until we stop the spending on the federal level. The most frequent way we enter a recession is the Fed raises rates to fight inflation. The leading indicator for this type of recession is housing. Bill McBride, author of the economics blog Calculated Risk, told Fortune this summer, "It is not target, but it is essentially the target." Of course, we're also already seeing these housing-spurred economic contractions. Home builders are cutting back, real estate firms are trimming headcounts, and some regional housing markets, like Boise and Seattle, have already slipped into a home price correction. Realtors are feeling it big time as well. I put in a call to Greater Las Vegas Association of Realtors, and the employee I spoke with said they were averaging about 300 new members every month. This month, she had estimated 120. However, she has been processing about 30 realtor withdrawals a day, Riffle says. That means every day around 30 real estate agents in Vegas alone are calling it quits. Now let's rewind back into the intro of this article. When analysts say the Fed will push until something breaks, they're implying the Fed's inflation campaign is going to continue until either inflation abates or something pushes the economy into a recession. That something could be a distress in the bond market. That's at 4% with no GDP to back it up. Or perhaps some liquidity issues at major financial firms, but there's growing concern that something could be the housing market. Which would be really cool for a lot of us. Again, one of the big things that goes on with the housing market as it sits right now, and as I've always said, is the fact that the ARM crisis isn't out there right now. We're not looking at adjustable rates that are skyrocketing with the Fed pushing this up and pushing people who are otherwise budgeting and able to make it out of their homes. Now they're just coming out of their homes because they can't make it. So we'll see what happens and where that goes. What happens as the grocery prices, the meat prices, the milk prices, and the gas prices rise up to unsustainability for a lot of people, and we will see what happens with that. Let's look at some polls. We have RCP up here. First, we're going to look at the latest polls and see what is coming out right as we go into this. We have a new Daily Wire Trafalgar that shows Walker up to 2 in Georgia. Kemp and Abrams are Kemp plus 7, also Daily Wire Trafalgar. Oz versus Fetterman, according to CBS News YouGov, is Fetterman plus 2. New Hampshire, Bolduc versus Hassan, is Hassan plus 3, a Democrat. However, Sununu, Republican, in New Hampshire for governor, is plus 12. New Hampshire also has a Trump versus Biden, showing Biden plus 1. One of the very few that we see Biden up in right now. So that is what we see for that. 3 polls for Dixon versus Whitmer. One shows a tie. That's Michigan News Source Trafalgar on CNN and Crignal. CNN and Crignal both show Whitmer plus 6. Michigan News Source Trafalgar is a dead tie. CNN poll actually shows a little bit of a buck in the trend for governor here in Wisconsin. Johnson is still plus 1 over Barnes because Barnes absolutely sucks, but Evers plus 2. Interestingly enough, from Pennsylvania for the CNN polls, Mastriano versus Shapiro. Shapiro, the Democrat, is plus 15, but Fetterman can only pull a plus 5, partially because there's something seriously wrong with John Fetterman. And this is, by the way, into the same polling firm. I don't know if this is the same poll, but it's the same firm. Let's look at a few of the individual races. Some of the ones that are heating up. We'll look at the Senate first. Florida. I want to look at the Rubio race because we'll be talking about him later. With a spread of Rubio plus 6.4, there's only been one poll so far of registered voters that shows Demings up, and Demings is up plus 4. Otherwise, we've got plus 11, plus 12, plus 7, plus 6. So I do think that this is a fairly safe race for Rubio. We don't have a chart for this one, so we can't go back and chart where this has been going. My race in Wisconsin, obviously. That one holds some importance to me, so we'll see what happens with that. Looks like currently on the spread, Johnson is plus 2.7, and that is the fact that all of our recent polling is showing CNN, Marquette, CBS News, YouGov is +1, +6, and +1 respectively. So that seems to be a fairly comfortable lead for Mr. Johnson, especially given the fact that our state does tend to oversample Democrats. What are some other good ones that we need to look at? Let's look at the Pennsylvania one. We are seeing a Fetterman has always been in the lead in Pennsylvania, but it has been waning, and waning steadily as we go. Fetterman did increase his lead at one point, but that's fallen, and it's waning, because, again, there is something that is seriously wrong with John Fetterman. I do still expect John Fetterman to take this one. It's regrettable, but I do still expect John Fetterman to take this one. By the skin of his teeth, and there's no runoff in Pennsylvania, so that would be the other one that I would see. Let's see, who else is big in the news? We've got Warnock plus 0.3 in Georgia, with the dead tie and the Walker plus 2 coming up to bring that lead up a little bit. This is what I would call a dead heat. This one actually I could see going either way. We do have the incumbency advantage for Warnock, which is actually fairly powerful. Let's look at some of the governor races. Florida, we will look at Chris versus DeSantis. DeSantis plus 10. Hey, guys, Charlie Crist might pull it off, you guys. You know, there's that one St. Pete poll that shows Crist plus 1. He might pull it off. It might happen, you guys. DeSantis plus 21, University of North Florida. That's an old poll, but 2.7 to 2.20. Governor race in Wisconsin. Oddly enough, Evers plus 1. I'm a little bit surprised by that because it does look like Michaels has been pulling ahead off of this one. And this is just local bias and what I see coming out of this. I see Michaels signs all over the place. I don't hardly see any Evers sign. In fact, where I live, I hear a lot of people complain about Evers. But again, one of the things you have to keep in mind with my state is our statewide races are all decided by Madison and Milwaukee. So that might throw some honking with that. We'll see what happens with that. That one for me again could go literally either way. Kemp versus Abrams. Hey, Abrams might pull that one off. It might happen. Kemp plus 7.5. Abrams, she might do it. And Texas. Let's look at Texas. Abbott versus O'Rourke. Abbott plus 9.3 in the spread. Beto might pull it off, you guys. He might do it. He'll close that spread. He'll eat the magic dirt, and it'll just magically go away. All right, that's what we see coming out of our polls. This will probably be, well, we'll look at it on Election Day just to get our last look at this, but let's get into the main news of the day. And we are going to start with a quote of Matthew J. Dowd. Dowd says, "I'm not going to say the GOP are Nazis, but it certainly sounds very familiar to what happened in Germany, which is a bunch of citizens. Hitler gets a third of the vote. They went along because he said he would solve the economy and fix the inflation." Let's listen, and I do have some things to say about that. Of course I have things to say about that. I think that's part of the reason you guys are here.
We talk about this all the time. Democracy on the ballot. It's not just a slogan. You know, I mean, we're talking about women literally losing agency over themselves. Donald Trump has said, you know where he's going to challenge the election? Already in advance, he says he's going to do it. Philly. That's a dog whistle, right? I mean, it's not even being hidden. At this point, it's just fascism in the open. And what scares me is that I'm not sure everybody minds. You know, I think there are some people who will just sit back and let it happen, thinking it won't be that bad. And that, to me, is almost more dangerous than the radicals.
Well, I mean, I'm not calling, I'm not going to say that, the GOP are Nazis at this point or whatever, but it certainly sounds very familiar to what happened in Germany, which is a bunch of citizens. Adolf Hitler gets a third of the vote. Nobody thought it could happen there. They kind of went along because they said he was going to solve the economy and fix inflation.
Yeah, that's right.
You can hear those sorts of things. And then, lo and behold, a few years later, they lost their democracy, and they're all like, how'd that happen here? That's my worry. That is my worry. If obviously the price of a hamburger, the price of milk, the price of gas is concerning. But that is a short-term problem. The loss of a democracy will decimate everyone's freedom. I think we shouldn't try to be saying you need to adopt our culture or whatever it happens to be. That is the white nationalist. It should be, we stand for democracy. We stand for the Constitution and the dignity of all. That's what we stand for. And if you're with us, join us.
That's exactly right. And then we can all argue about tax rates and normal politics later. But we got to have a democracy to have anything to argue about. Otherwise, there's no point. There's nothing to argue about. Yeah.
We're not going to tell you to adopt our lifestyle, but bake the cake, bigot. Use the pronouns, bigot. Say Black Lives Matter. Post your black square, bigot. What a joke. And the thing that gets me about this is the fact that, they say, well, Hitler gets a third of the vote and we went along because he said he would solve the economy and fix the inflation. Yeah, well, you know what else Hitler did? He also spread propaganda. Thanks to Brit for that. But he also went out there and assured the entire world that one particular group of people was the source of all their problems. And what's scary about, and they don't seem to see this, obviously, or they're deliberately being obtuse about it. That seems to be the more reasonable aspect of this. They don't seem to see it, but what they don't see is the fact that with a lot of the rhetoric, with a lot of the things that they say, if you literally replace MAGA with Jews in a lot of their speeches, they sound like Hitler speeches. So, that is Matthew J. Dowd, the pride of Texas. I don't know what he does in Texas, but he's blue checked.
We talk about this all the time. Democracy on the...
Shut up, you. And his website is dowdtexas.com. So he is a proud father, a human being with many thoughts, writer and analyst. I have no idea. But apparently he does something in Texas. All right, some of the other electioneering propaganda that comes with this. From the Dissociated Press. Slavery is on the ballot for voters in 5 U.S. states. From Kimberly Cruisey. This article is a couple days old, but I want to touch on this and just give my thoughts on this. More than 150 years after slaves were freed in the U.S., voters in 5 states will soon decide whether to close loopholes that led to the proliferation of a different form of slavery. Forced labor by people convicted of certain crimes. None of the proposals would force immediate changes inside the state's prisons, though they could lead to legal challenges related to how they use prison labor. A lasting imprint of slavery's legacy on the entire United States. There you go. We're going back to the DOJ is really brought... it's evolved from slave patrols. The effort is part of a national push to amend the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that banned enslavement or involuntary servitude, except as a form of criminal punishment. That exception has long permitted the exploitation of labor by convicted felons. The idea that you could ever finish the sentence "slavery is okay when" has to rip out your soul. And I think that's what makes this a fight that ignores political lines and brings us together because it feels so clear. Said Bianca Tylek, executive director of Worth Rises, a criminal justice advocacy group pushing to remove the amendment's convict labor clause. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, before we get into any of that, with the current administration in, That's not going to happen. You literally have a vice president who was an attorney general using this loophole. It's not a loophole, it was there by design, obviously. But using this specific provision of the 13th Amendment to fight the wildfires in her state. Nearly 20 states have constitutions that include language permitting slavery and involuntary servitude as criminal punishments. In 2018, Colorado was the first to remove the language from its founding frameworks by ballot measure, followed by Nebraska and Utah 2 years later. This November, versions of the question go before voters in Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont. Senator Ramesh Akbari, a Democrat from Memphis, was shocked when a fellow lawmaker told her about the slavery exception in the Tennessee Constitution and immediately began working to replace the language. When I found out that this exception existed, I thought, we've got to fix this, and we've got to fix this right now, she said. Our Constitution should reflect the values and beliefs of our state. Constitutions require lengthy and technically tricky steps before they can be tweaked. Akbari first proposed changes in 2019. The GOP-dominant General Assembly then had to pass the changes by a majority vote in a 2-year legislative period, and then pass it again with at least 2/3 approval in the next. The amendment could go on the ballot in the year of the next gubernatorial election. Akbari also had to work with the State Department of Correction to ensure the inmate labor wouldn't be prohibited under her proposal. The proposed language going before Tennessean voters more clearly distinguishes between the two. Slavery and involuntary servitude are forever prohibited. Nothing in this section shall prohibit the inmate from working when the inmate has been duly convicted of a crime. We understand that those who are incarcerated cannot be forced to work without pay, but we should not create a situation where they won't be able to work at all, Akbari said. Now, as far as this goes, given that Akbari is a leftist, I have my concerns that this will not go the way that this is being presented. But as this is being presented, I'm actually not entirely opposed to this. Now, getting Alabama to be on board with this and Tennessee as well, these are states that are known for putting people into the prison farm. They go down to the prison farm, you break the rocks, you share a crop, you farm the stuff, because what else are you going to do for the rest of your life? They could just sit you in a box and you don't go back and do anything. But then, you get the depression, you get the anxiety, you get the people shanked in the showers, which will still happen anyway, even with the labor. I like the fact, though, that she's bringing up the ability for people to still be able to go to work. And this, again, is coming from a situation where I've been in, where I've worked in a company that took work release. They weren't doing the work in the prison. I actually don't know how the Wisconsin penal system works with labor in the medium and the max security prisons. I don't know how they do that with the stamping license plates or making underwear like Orange is the New Black or anything like that. But I know they would take guys out of the prison, the minimum security prison, ship them over to a place that I worked. I'm not going to obviously dox the name of the place that I worked. And these guys would work taking rendered pieces from various slaughterhouses, transferring them out from the pallets that they were in into a big dump trailer, and then they would send that up to rendering plants. They were getting actually a decent wage too at the time. Like, they weren't getting upwards of where the rest of us were, but I think they were getting $5-6 an hour. At a time when the rest of us, the people who were wrenching, were getting 10. Nothing to spend it on because they're in prison. But it goes into account and they have a little bit of money to work with when they get out. And this is minimum security kind of stuff too. So this is people who were at the end of their sentence. They were on good behavior for the entire time that they were in their sentence. Otherwise, they wouldn't be eligible for minimum security. So they have an opportunity to do that. But again, I mean, if you're making the underwear like Orange is the New Black or stamping the license plate, I do think that you should be getting paid for that. And you should be able to opt into that instead of just sitting in the box constantly. Obviously, maybe not minimum wage or even a lower amount because they are putting room and board over your head. But that is on the ballot in 5 states. And again, one of the things that I want to look at because of a Democrat from Memphis is, what's the catch? What is the catch? All right, we have an op-ed from the Washington Post from one Max Boot. The weasel words in this, by the way, are just amazing when they go back and do this. Opinion: the midterms are a referendum on democracy in America and Ukraine. Which means that if the simple majority don't want your democracy, that would be democratically selected, correct? I got a feeling that Mr. Boot is not going to see it that way. From Max Boot. Polls suggest the economy and crime are among the most important issues for voters in the midterms, and that, as a result, Republicans are surging in the home stretch. I think a lot of voters are missing the point. These elections are actually a referendum on whether you favor the continuation of democracy in America and the Ukraine. Oh, the Ukraine. Those issues are more closely linked than most people realize because most of the same MAGA candidates who support Trump's strongman rule at home are either indifferent or hostile to the fate of the democracy abroad. You know, let's just ignore the fact that our current sitting president had a proposal that thankfully got shot down by the courts, even though they'll try to gaslight you and say, well, that proposal never existed. But it had an actual proposal by which you could not work for a major corporation if you didn't get the holy jab. Strongman rule. Are they indifferent or hostile to the fate of democracy abroad? J.D. Vance, the GOP nominee for U.S. Senate in Ohio, exemplifies the trend. He has said the 2020 election was stolen, and I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other. Based. That makes it all the more disturbing that Vance and other MAGA candidates are in the lead 2 weeks before the election day. Oh, democracy is on the ballot. No, not that way. If you pick the wrong person, that's not democracy. Even if it's Democratic, even if it's 75% of your populace pick the wrong person, that's not democracy. That makes it all the more disturbing that Vance and other MAGA candidates are in the lead 2 weeks before Election Day. Vladimir Putin, because of course it's always Putin, must have a smug smile on his face as he reads reports of recent political developments in the main enemy, as KGB agents of his generation referred to the United States. A post-analysis found that a majority of Republican nominees on the ballot this November for the House, Senate, and key statewide offices, 291 in all, have denied or questioned the outcome of the last presidential election. Based. Put another way, this means a majority of the most important GOP candidates reject the fundamental premise of a democracy, which is to accept the outcome of an election even if your side loses. Boy, Max Boot, it kind of sounds to me like you're not ready to accept the outcome of the election that's coming up if it doesn't go your way. Yet in a recent New York Times Siena College poll, 39% of voters and 71% of Republicans say they're open to supporting candidates who reject the results of the 2020 election. Based. If these candidates prevail, it will mean that aspiring authoritarians could have a stranglehold on our democracy. You know, much like the former AG of California, who's now our vice president, who used prison labor to fight wildfires, sometimes ignoring evidence being presented to make sure that these people stayed in prison. It's especially worrisome to see so many election deniers running so strongly as candidates for governor or secretary of state in swing states, positions in which they would have to certify the results of the next presidential election. Their terrifying credo was expressed by Jim Marchant, the GOP nominee for Secretary of State in Nevada, who said, "When my coalition of Secretary of State candidates around the country get elected, we're going to fix the whole country, and President Trump is going to be president again in 2024. State-level election deniers will have a lot of support from election deniers in Congress. It's hard to imagine MAGA members voting to certify a Biden victory in 2024, honk honk. It's easy to imagine them doing everything possible to harass and hinder the Biden admin, based from launching a politically motivated investigation, based to forcing a debt default, super based. That's right, default on it, shut it down. Because if you default on it, then you're going to stop throwing more money into the damn thing. And by the way, the Biden admin will acquiesce if they force the showdown on the debt default. And I'm here for that. I am stocking up on popcorn for that day, just so you know. To prepare the ground for a Trump comeback in 2024, and if the Orange Emperor does take power again, you can bet he will try to euthanize our democracy. The fallout could reach, and this is the best part of this, the fallout could reach all the way to Ukraine, where an embattled democracy needs U.S. aid to beat back the Russian invasion. Last week, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, the likely next House Speaker, unbased, said, "I think people are going to be sitting in a recession if they're not going to write a blank check to Ukraine. They just won't do it." His comment drew criticism from other leading Republicans, including Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and former Vice President Pence, but McCarthy pays closer attention to the far right. The evil far right. The Nazis, but not the Nazis in Ukraine. We like those Nazis. Because so many MAGA extremists sit in the House, and he knows that they've been turning against Ukraine in recent months. The Pew Research Center found that the percentage of Republicans saying the U.S. is sending too much aid to Ukraine has shot up from 9% in March to 32% last month, based. That's hardly surprising, given the fact that the two most influential right-wing voices in the country, Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump, are hostile to Ukraine and sympathetic to Russia. Is Tucker still a thing, by the way? Like, I know that a lot of the times over on Twitter, a lot of MAGA and right-wing Twitter would share a lot of Tucker clips, but lately, for the last few weeks, the only people that I hear talking about Tucker are far left progressive Twitter. They throw up a clip and then they start to complain about it. I never see anybody else talk about Tucker anymore. I actually posited on Twitter the other day that I don't think Tucker would have an audience. If all the progressive Twitter and all the progressives in the U.S. stopped hate watching Tucker, he'd have like 6 viewers a night. I posited. But I've also said the same thing about the Daily Wire and The View. Although with the Daily Wire and The View, I'm pretty sure that if the Daily Wire stopped watching The View, their viewership would drop to 0. If McCarthy were so inclined, he could put together a coalition of Democrats and hawkish Republicans in the House to pass more aid for Ukraine. Yeah, but nobody wants that. But he would have to risk incurring the wrath of Trump and his MAGA minions. It's hard to imagine McCarthy, who has the spine of Jell-O, doing anything so principled. If he faces a choice between the loss of speakership and the loss of Ukraine, you can guess which he would choose. So long, Zelensky. I think the Ukraine is done, because it's going to start getting cold in Europe and the gas isn't going to be there. And the governments of the EU are going to start looking at whatever we can do to keep our citizens warm. Boot closes out. If you support democracy in America and Ukraine, you need to vote for Democrats on November 8th. But if the current trends hold up, Republicans are likely to take over at least the House and quite possibly the Senate in Democratic elections. So, don't do democracy wrong. Do it the way that we tell you to. Otherwise, it's not democracy. So there you go. The midterms are a referendum on democracy. What else do we have here? Oh, you guys are going to love this one. We get to listen to Hillary Clinton talk. Breaking 911. Hillary Clinton. Right-wing extremism already has a plan to literally steal the next presidential election. Which means they're looking forward and seeing that they're probably not going to win. But hey, what did we just hear about people who don't accept the results of the previous presidential election?
Hello, Indivisibles. I'm here to highlight something that is keeping me up at night. And I know this group really understands what I'm about to say. I know we're all focused on the 2022 midterm elections, and they are incredibly important. But we also have to look ahead, because you know what? Our opponents certainly are. Right-wing extremists already have a plan to literally steal the next presidential election. And they're not making a secret of it. The right-wing controlled Supreme Court may be poised to rule on giving state legislatures, yes, you heard me that correctly, state legislatures the power to overturn presidential elections. Just think, if that happens.
They already have that. That's in the Constitution, literally. Article 2, Section 1. You were a senator. You swore an oath to uphold that document. Maybe you should go and read it sometime.
The 2024 presidential election could be decided not by the popular vote or even by the anachronistic Electoral College, but by state legislatures, many of them Republican-controlled. But there's also good news in the face of this very real threat to democracy. Indivisible has launched Crush the Coup to make sure we're ready to defend democracy in 2024. They've put together a list of critical races in 6 key states and how you can get involved. Will you support Crush the Coup by donating to Indivisible and state legislature candidates? Each of these races is highly competitive, and your dollars could very well decide the winners and the winner of the next presidential election. This could not be more important or more urgent.
Guys, will you support Stop the Coup? Will you go join Hillary Clinton's super PAC? Let me guess. Stop the Coup, Act Blue, support now, secure.actblue.com.
Hello, Indivisibles.
I like the comments down here. Election denier. So, there you go. That's your midterm right there. How about we grab one from, while we're talking about the midterm stuff, one from Jersey, my wife's son, Reliant, who somehow in the midst of things actually got blue checked. That's surprising. Maybe they'll take it back away from him, like they did with Dabrowski. Here's Dark Brandon blasting Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Vern Buchanan, and Ted Cruz for criticizing student loan forgiveness while they collected millions in forgiven PPO loans. Who the hell do they think they are? Let's listen.
I don't want to hear it from MAGA Republicans, officials who had hundreds of thousands of dollars of debts, even millions of dollars in pandemic relief loans forgiven, who now are attacking me for helping working class and middle class Americans. My team at the White House posted a video of this, folks, online. You should check it out. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she and her husband got $180,000 in business loans forgiven from the PPP program. She said it's completely unfair for us to forgive student loans for working and middle class Americans. Representative Vern Buchanan of Florida said our plan was reckless. Guess how much he got in that program? Forgiven. $2,300,000. This is not a joke.
Oh! Oh!
Republican governors wrote me a letter saying this relief only helps the elite few. Y'all know you're the elite few? I knew you were really special, but I know you're the elite few. I'm serious. Ted Cruz, the great senator from Texas, he said it's for slackers, quote, slackers who don't deserve relief. Who in the hell do they think they are? But this.
Okay. I have student loans. I'm going to tell you that right now. I have student loans. Which means that I went down through and I read through the promissory note. Now, I've struggled with mine because, as most of you know, when I lived in Kenosha, I was really poor. Most of you know the lore behind that already. But the thing is, and I've done for both a state school and for a private school. The mechanic school I went to was a private school. The thing with both of those is I read through the promissory notes, and of course, on the second part, because I didn't have a lawyer the first time through, but on the second time through, I had the lawyer look through them too. I don't recall. Well, you don't have you have to pay these back unless, of course, you do X thing, which I think X thing would be vote for Democrats if it did exist. But I don't recall a line like that. That wasn't baked into the cake on the student loans of, well, you will have to pay these back unless you do this. There's no quid pro quo for student loans. But see, the thing with the PPP is you went into that literally from the beginning, knowing for the fallback of, well, this is a loan if you have to close down. So you're going to have to do everything you can to try to keep your business open and keep these people employed. Otherwise, if you can do that, if you can keep all these people employed, it becomes a grant. It becomes free money, which I disagreed with. I told, and you guys have been watching this program since the beginning, I said right from the beginning that the PPP was a bad idea. But it also seems like it was put up there to lure people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ted Cruz, etc. into a trap. So now they can go back and beat them over the head when they try to do the student loan forgiveness. Because they seem to be bringing it up quite a bit. I'll go look at my promissory notes again, because I'm sure I know where they are. I'll go see if there actually is a provision in there of, well, you do have to pay these back in full, unless, of course, you vote Democrat for the rest of your life. That's the only quid pro quo I could think of that would be in something like that. All right. Let's keep going. Got one from MSN. Gotta come back up here because I went and looked and saw if there was some video into this one. Voter intimidation has already begun in Arizona. From Kayla Philo. Democracy, 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 democracy. We're about 2 weeks away from Election Day, but some voter intimidation efforts are already underway in Arizona, painting an ominous picture of just how far some big lie activists may go to push their debunked voter fraud narrative during the midterms. 2 armed individuals dressed in tactical gear. A vest. They were dressed in a vest. Were spotted lingering around a ballot drop box in Mesa, Arizona on Friday evening. CNN first reported. They left when the county sheriff arrived. blow that one up. Tactical gear. A vest. They're wearing a vest. That also says they're fully disguised, but I'm going to blow this up again because it kind of looks to me. Okay, I guess he does have a gaiter on. It's hard to see. It doesn't. No, he doesn't. Fully disguised. You can see his face fully in that. This one you can't. This one's got the gaiter on. But my first question, of course, is: are we looking at Patriot Front here? Are we looking at people that are picked up and selected by certain Democrat operatives to come out and do something like this? The first question I always have, because it's just so convenient, is: are these people being paid by the left? Nicole Gregg tweets out, I've been reporting for days on voter intimidation complaints in Arizona. There have been 3 complaints that have been referred to the DOJ. This video is not one of those reports. This is the other intimidation complaint filed with the Arizona SOS. My colleague, Jay Bontke, ABC 15, says deputies are measuring the distance to make sure ballot watchers weren't too close. They've got the measuring stick out. Are you kidding me? This is real life, folks. It's not the first report of voter intimidation at drop boxes in the state in recent days. In a separate incident, a pair of activists reportedly filmed, photographed, and harassed a couple of voters turning in their early ballots. There's a group of people hanging out near the ballot drop box and accusing them of being a mule. The voter who reported the incident said, according to CNN, the incident has been referred to the DOJ and the state's Attorney General's office. I don't know, guys. I really don't. I could see that going either way. Another one off of this from the Mad Owl blog. Key candidate contributes to voter intimidation problem in Arizona. Would that be Katie Hobbs by any chance? Yeah, go out there. If you get picked up there, we'll just dismiss your charges. Go out there and pretend to be a right-winger. Hey, we'll let you raid the evidence locker. You can have some of these illegal gun parts. Yeah, I know you don't know how to use them. Just put them on your vest. It'll look good for the cameras. The real-world consequences of Republicans' election lies and conspiracy theories are painfully common. Arizona, for example, is not only holding some of the nation's most important and competitive statewide races this year, it's also been a hotbed for right-wing election madness in the wake of Trump's narrow defeat in the Grand Canyon state 2 years ago. The Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, reported last week that local public officials expressed concern that menacing bands of activist observers hunting for fraud will harass and intimidate voters. 1 day later, those fears were borne out, the NBC affiliate in Phoenix reported. 2 armed individuals were seen dressed in tactical gear outside a Mesa ballot drop box on Friday, the Maricopa County Elections Department said. The department said deputies from the Maricopa Sheriff's Office were called to the area. When they arrived, 2 individuals reportedly left the area. This incident comes only 2 days after a Mesa couple reported an alleged case of voter intimidation outside the ballot box located at the Maricopa County Juvenile Court. Is it the same couple? The man and his wife say a group of people hanging out near a ballot box took pictures and video of the couple and accused them of being a mule. They also said they took photos of their license plates. In case this isn't obvious, there's no evidence of meaningful voter fraud. Widespread. You're using the wrong buzzword, Benin. Widespread is what you're supposed to be using. In 2020 or any other election cycle, there's nothing wrong with voting by way of ballot drop boxes, and there's no need for vigilantes fueled by discredited nonsense to intimidate and harass law-abiding Americans engaged in the most basic of civic duties. And yet, here we are. The Arizona Republic reported late last week, days after Maricopa County officials warned people to stop taking photos of voters and election staffers at ballot drop boxes. The Arizona Secretary of State's office continues to refer complaints to the DOJ. So, MSNBC is going to take the, well, you should be able to go back and do this line of things. From CNN, temporary restraining order sought against group linked to voter intimidation allegations in Arizona. From Tierney Sneed and Kyung Laa. An association for retirees and an organization for Latino voters are seeking a temporary restraining order against a group they allege is coordinating a campaign of voter intimidation in Arizona. The restraining order request was filed Monday evening with a federal court lawsuit alleging that the group Clean Elections USA and its founder, Melody Jennings, were running afoul of federal law with incidences near ballot drop box locations in Arizona. The lawsuit accuses defendants of a coordinated campaign of vigilante voter intimidation in violation with the Voting Rights Act and a federal civil rights law. Clean Elections USA did not respond to a CNN inquiry. A status conference has been scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m. in a federal courthouse in Phoenix. The lawsuit points to 3 complaints that have been submitted by voters to election officials in the state. The complaints reported individuals photographing the license plates of voters as they sought to cast ballots via drop boxes, with one complaint alleging that the individuals called the voters a mule, a reference to a fringe voter fraud conspiracy theory. The Arizona Secretary of State's office has referred those and similar complaints of intimidation to the Justice Department. Yeah, you have to let people go and stuff hundreds of ballots into a box at a time, otherwise you're intimidating. Although that didn't happen in 2020 and never happened ever. 2020 is the freest and fairest election in history. Nothing bad happened. And in fact, Biden got 81 million votes, more votes than any president in U.S. history. More votes than Barack Obama. Honk honk. Wink wink. The Arizona Secretary of State's office has referred those and similar complaints of intimidation to the U.S. Justice Department, in spite of the fact that that is a local crime, per Article 2, Section 1. So that sounds to me like they are getting ready to go back and use Garland against their political enemies again. Katie Hobbs, go do your job. This one on the other side of the aisle from the New York Post. Rubio campaign canvasser brutally beaten by a man who told him GOP is not allowed in his neighborhood. We will be careful with some of the imagery off this because I probably can't show some of this on YouTube. A campaign canvasser for Marco Rubio was attacked and seriously injured late Sunday by an assailant who told him Republicans weren't welcome in his neighborhood, and Rubio and local police said on Monday. Javier Lopez of Hialeah was arrested at the scene by responding cops who found the unidentified victim with cuts and bruises. Hialeah police said the victim was distributing campaign materials in the Miami area city when Lopez approached him and said he was not allowed to walk on the sidewalk and pass out flyers in his neighborhood. The canvasser walked across the street to avoid Lopez, but Lopez followed him, officials added. Mr. Lopez then struck the victim multiple times in the face, causing injuries, police spokesperson said. Rubio tweeted several pictures of the victim, showing him bloodied and swollen in the back of an ambulance and in a hospital bed. I probably have to click this off for a second before we scroll past this, because there's no way I can show that on YouTube. Let me censor that for a moment. Okay. And this one's got the filter over the top of it. Last night, one of our canvassers was wearing my t-shirt and a DeSantis hat and was brutally attacked by 4 animals who told him Republicans weren't allowed in their neighborhoods in Hialeah. He suffered internal bleeding, a broken jaw, and will need facial reconstructive surgery. No, Horatius, you're wrong. The movie's already in production. They're just waiting to put names into it for the script. I saw the photo of Rubio. I'm like, oh crap, do I have to pull that back off? But no, it's Rubio, not the canvasser. Last night, one of the canvassers, we read the tweet already, the senator also addressed the attack at a campaign event in Hialeah on Monday. I can tell you this, political violence should not be tolerated by anyone, he told his audience, according to the Miami Herald. Our side or their side, we won't tolerate political violence in this country. We decide who governs not by street mobs, we decide who governs at the ballot box. Alright, so we've got one side where we've got people just standing around in tactical gear that I can't even determine whether or not these people are actually MAGA supporters or not. And then on the other side of the country, we've got a person literally beating another person to death, nearly to death. I guess the Maddow blog couldn't go talk about the Rubio one. Let's talk about last night's debate. Florida's Hispanic voters backed DeSantis over Crist, support sending illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard, left-wing poll. From Ryan Saavedra. A newly released poll has found that Latino voters in the state of Florida support Ron DeSantis over Charlie Crist by 7% in the state's gubernatorial election next month. The left-leaning Telemundo, which is a CNN subsidiary, LX News poll conducted by Mason Dixon Polling and Strategy found that Latinos supported DeSantis over Crist 51-44 and gave DeSantis a 56% approval rating. The poll also found that Latino voters supported DeSantis' decision to send illegals to Martha's Vineyard, with 50% in favor and 43% opposed. NBC News noted that support for DeSantis sending the illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard is highest among Latino immigrants, 52-41. The report noted the poll showing DeSantis' 7-point lead with Latino voters comes after DeSantis lost the Latino vote during his 2018 gubernatorial victory over Andrew Gillum. Mason-Dixon pollster Brad Coker said that DeSantis' charisma and attitude has won over a lot of Latino voters. There are a lot of Hispanic voters in the state who really like the governor's style, the strong man who won't back down, Coker said, and Crist has no mojo. I've lost my mojo! Republican strategist Giancarlo Sopo said Democrats fundamentally misunderstood what Latino voters believe about immigration. Too many Democrats think Hispanics like uncontrolled mass migration, and they couldn't be more wrong, Sopo said. Those of us who remember Miami in the 80s and 90s remember the aftermath of Mario, when 120,000 people showed up in the community over a span of 6 months. What we're now seeing at the border is 2 Marios per month. Coker later added that the problem Democrats are having in the midterm elections is the state of the U.S. economy under President Biden. You can't ignore the 800-pound gorilla. The economy sucks for a lot of people, Coker said. And in the last stretch of the election, it comes down to a referendum on a sitting president And how is the economy? On both counts, the Democrats come up short. Well, yeah, and they can go back and say, well, you'll be deported, you'll be deported, you'll be deported all day long. And that worked for a lot of people for a long time. The people who were given amnesty, offered amnesty, or told that they were going to get amnesty just as long as you kept voting Democrat, or getting your friends to vote Democrat, or getting your family members to vote Democrat. But it only goes so far. And that's a big part of the problem that they're having right now in Florida and in other places like that, is the fact that the Hispanic community is extremely Catholic, which means that the abortion talk doesn't play well with them. And these are people who are now third, fourth, and fifth generation, who've been here, whose grandparents and great-grandparents at some points came over, a lot of times the legal way, but sometimes the illegal way. But, you know, they're here, their parents were legal, their grandparents were legal. They own a business. They have a nice quarter acre somewhere in Miami. From the Blaze, DeSantis faces off against Crist in Florida gubernatorial debate. Says Crist is the only worn-out donkey he's aiming to put out to pasture. From Alex Nitzberg. During a Florida gubernatorial debate on Monday, former Florida Governor Charlie Crist pressed current Sunshine State Governor Ron DeSantis to say whether he would serve a full 4-year term if reelected to office, but DeSantis declared that the only worn-out old donkey he's seeking to put out to pasture is Charlie Crist. DeSantis is an enormously popular figure on the political right who many political watchers view as someone who could potentially become a future GOP presidential candidate. Crist previously served as Florida governor from early 2007 to 2011 after being elected to the role as a Republican. He lost a U.S. Senate race to Marco Rubio in 2010 while running as an independent. Crist lost the state's 2014 governor's race while running as a Democrat. He served in the House as a Democrat, but stepped down from that role earlier this year. During the debate, DeSantis spoke strongly against allowing minors to undergo gender transition measures. The governor said that what they say, gender-affirming care, they mean giving puberty blockers to teenage girls and teenage boys. They mean doing double mastectomies on young girls. They mean chemically castrating young boys. That's wrong, DeSantis declared. He described it as inappropriate to engage in what he said is essentially genital mutilation. When speaking about education during another section of the debate, DeSantis said, "I'm proud of our history. I don't want to teach kids to hate our country. I don't want to teach kids to hate each other. And the way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race." And realistically, I mean, they do this all the time. That's one thing to watch for us, especially. It's a constant thing with governors. They did this to Walker in, when the hell was that? 2014. When he was facing off for re-election against Mary Burke at the time. Was that the recall? No, that wasn't the recall. Mary Burke wasn't the recall. But they did that to him too. Like, oh, well, Scott Walker has presidential ambitions. You shouldn't vote for him because he doesn't care about you. He'll just leave you high and dry and go off to be the president. Meanwhile, letting the lieutenant governor take over Rebecca Clayfish. Which arguably would have been worse, but I mean, you still had another warmongering neocon in the governor's mansion in Wisconsin at the time. But it's the same line that they drag out no matter what. Well, this person might become president. He might step down from the position you're voting for him for. Do you really want to vote for him for temporary? Will you commit to just staying here and not running for the presidency? Why would you do that? That's like saying, I don't think I could win the presidency, so why would you want to go and vote for me for governor? Five takeaways from the only Florida governor debate between DeSantis and Crist. from Steve Contorno. Down in the polls and nearly out of campaign money, Christ entered the Sunrise Theater in Fort Pierce with almost nothing left to lose, and repeatedly put DeSantis on the defensive over the divisive agenda that has catapulted the Republican into GOP stardom. Christ's objective Monday was to twofold: build momentum for the final weeks of the Florida race and bruise the national reputation of DeSantis, who's also weighing a potential presidential primary campaign against former President Trump as he seeks re-election as governor. I was to the understanding he's not seeking a primary campaign against the former president. I think that's a lie, CNN. 5 takeaways. DeSantis won't commit to a full 4-year term. It didn't work with Walker. Why the hell did you think it would work now? In one such moment, Chris attempted to get DeSantis to commit to a full 4-year term if he wins in November. DeSantis, considering a run for president in 2024, wouldn't bite. The exchange began when DeSantis comparing Chris's policies to President Biden. Chris responded by suggesting that DeSantis was focused on Biden because he wants to face the president in 2024. I have a question for you. You're running for governor. Why don't you look in the eyes of the people of the state of Florida and say to them, if you're reelected, you'll serve a full 4-year term as governor? Chris said, yes or no. DeSantis stared on the camera and didn't respond, producing a prolonged silence. Chris then chimed in. It's not a tough question, it's a fair question. He won't tell you. When Chris' time expired, DeSantis finally responded. I know that Charlie's interested in talking about 2024 and Joe Biden, DeSantis said, but I just want to make things very clear. The only worn-out donkey I'm looking to put out to pasture is Charlie Crist. DeSantis ducks on abortion. It's kind of telling, too, by the way, that so far the first 2 of these are CNN dunking on DeSantis. After the Supreme Court struck down Roe in late June, DeSantis, in a statement, said he would take steps to protect life in Florida, but he declined in the months to say what that action might be. When Carantes asked DeSantis what week abortion access should be cut off in Florida, the governor said he was proud of the state's 15-week ban that he signed into law earlier this year, but didn't say if he would support legislation to further restrict access in the state. Well, that's right, because that would be what the representatives would bring him, the state legislature. I just think we're better when everybody counts, DeSantis says. I understand not everyone's going to be born in perfect circumstances, but I would like to see everyone have a shot. Chris criticized the response for not answering the question and said the state's 15-week ban was callous and barbaric. The law includes exemptions for fatal fetal abnormality if 2 physicians confirm the diagnosis in writing, or when a pregnancy is a serious risk to the mother. It does not allow exemptions for rape, incest, or human trafficking. We just found out recently about a case of a middle school girl near Jacksonville who was a victim of incest, became impregnated because of the bill you signed, Governor. She had to go 2 to 3 states in order to take care of the issue. DeSantis accused Crist of only supporting abortion rights out of political expediency. He noted that when Crist was a Republican, he often considered himself on the other side of the abortion debate. Crist, a former GOP governor who left his party in 2010, once characterized himself as pro-life. Ha 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 ha! Coming with the receipts. DeSantis defends his most controversial actions, gender-affirming care and chemically castrating young boys, the migrant flights, etc., and the hurricane test. So yeah, I mean, this is all just dunking on DeSantis. The Daily Wire, on the other hand, coming out and showing the good side of DeSantis. DeSantis nuked Crist and fired at bait. His campaign was soliciting campaign contributions from storm victims. And we do have one video of that. Ron DeSantis slammed Crist during a gubernatorial debate on Monday in response to Crist's attack on DeSantis' handling of Hurricane Ian. The debate was originally scheduled for October 12th, but was postponed in the wake of the devastation that was caused by Hurricane Ian. The The debate comes as DeSantis has far outraised and outspent Crist in the election and is widely projected to win the next month race. Yeah, he's 11 points ahead. Crist might pull it off. Crist on DeSantis for his handling of hurricane comes after DeSantis' top political rival, President Biden, praised DeSantis' response to the natural disaster. What the governor has done is pretty remarkable, man, Biden said earlier this month. I think he's done a good job. Let's have a listen.
Well, look, I'm proud that we had 42,000 linemen staged, ready to go, unprecedented array of first responders. We were able to get in record time, effectuate thousands of rescues, get the power back on for millions of people in record time. And when the bridges got wiped out in Pine Island and in Sanibel, people thought those islands were going to be severed from the mainland for 6 months to a year. We did the Pine Island restoration in 3 days, and we did the Sanibel Causeway restoration in 2 weeks. Now those islands have the ability to recover, and Charlie Crist is sitting there. You know what he was doing during this? He was hiding out in Puerto Rico. He wasn't helping his community here. And then when he got back, what did he do? His campaign was soliciting campaign contributions from storm victims. That is unacceptable, and that's not what a leader would do in a time of despair.
Burn. Let's talk Abrams. We got a little bit more to go, and I think we can get some of the rest of this done. If we get down to the CBS article, we've got all the new stuff up, and then just leftovers after that. But very clear conflict of interest. Explosive new report reveals Stacey Abrams' scandal-plagued nonprofit group poured nearly $10 million into a law firm belonging to her campaign chairman. From Joseph McKinnon. A special report published on Monday by Politico revealed that the law firm belonging to Stacey Abrams' campaign chairman was paid nearly $10 million in legal fees for services rendered to Abrams' nonprofit group Fair Fight Action for its work on the lawsuit that recently failed in federal court. In addition to raising concerns about a possible conflict of interest, the exorbitant amounts paid to the Abrams-affiliated firm, while not unprecedented, have nevertheless been flagged as exceptional. Stacey Abrams is the Democrat candidate currently seeking to unseat Brian Kemp in Georgia's gubernatorial race. The chairman for her campaign, who also happens to be a close friend of Abrams, is Allegra Lawrence Hardy. Politico reported that Lawrence Hardy is one of the two named partners of the law firm Lawrence & Bundy. Lawrence Hardy's firm was reportedly paid $9.4 million by Fair Fight Action in 2019 and 2020. Fair Fight filed a lawsuit after Abrams was soundly defeated in 2018 by 54,723 votes. A result the Democrat candidate gained a reputation as an election denier for rejecting. The lawsuit claimed the state had grossly mismanaged the election, depriving some citizens of their right to vote. The Fair Fight Action versus Raffensperger trial began April 11th and was rejected by U.S. District Judge Steve Jones in Atlanta on September 30th. Jones, an Obama appointee who found for the defendants on all counts, stated that while Georgia's election system is not perfect, the challenged practices violate neither the Constitution nor the Voting Rights Act of '65, and as has been alleged by Abrams. Kemp said of the expensive legal failure, today Stacey Abrams and her organization lost in court on all counts. From day one, Abrams has used this lawsuit to line her pockets, sow distrust in our democratic institutions, and build her own celebrity. And the big question with that is, I do really have to wonder how much of that Stacey Abrams is getting back. Like, they can take the campaign funds out of the secure.actblue.com and go to pay for this lawsuit, obviously. That's part of their campaign. But the fact that it's going straight to a friend, and again, I don't know what the cost was behind getting all the lawyers and the researchers involved in that, but I could realistically see a world where both Allegra, what was it? Lawrence Hardy? Where both Lawrence Hardy and Abrams make out with $2.5 million in the pocket. Aiden told Politico, the Deputy Director for Litigation at the Defense Legal Fund, Leah Aiden, underscored that the legal fees paid to Lawrence Hardy's firm altogether accounted for an amount obscenely higher than in most voting rights cases brought to federal court. Aiden told Politico, this typical case is a couple $100,000 and can take a couple years. Beyond $10 million would be very shocking, I would say. I wonder where that came in. Lawrence Hardy's firm made a great deal of money advancing the ill-fated lawsuit that Abrams appeared to have used, in turn, not only to raise money, but as a campaign tool. Craig Holman, a government affairs lobbyist at Public Citizen, told Politico, it is a very clear conflict of interest because with that kind of close link to litigation and her friend, that provides an opportunity where the friend gets particularly enriched from this litigation. The outcome of that litigation can directly affect her campaign itself, added Holman. But don't worry. It's Stacey Abrams. It's a Democrat. They never do anything wrong. From CNBC, Clarence Thomas temporarily blocks Lindsey Graham's subpoena from Georgia grand jury. From Dan Mangan, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas on Monday temporarily blocked a subpoena demanding testimony from Lindsey Graham, from a Georgia grand jury investigating election interference by former President Trump. The hold on the subpoena came nearly 3 days after Graham's attorneys asked Thomas to delay the senator's appearance before the grand jury, which is investigating possible criminal interference in Georgia's presidential election in 2020. On Thursday, a panel of judges in the 11th Circuit, U.S. Court of Appeals, unanimously rejected a request by Graham to temporarily block the subpoena, which calls for the senator to testify on November 17th in an Atlanta courthouse. The appeals panel said Graham had failed to show he was likely to succeed on an appeal challenge the legality of demand for his testimony. Last month, a federal district judge upheld the legality of the grand jury subpoena. The grand jury specifically is probing the actions of Trump and his allies, including Graham, who contacted state election officials and others on the heels of the election, which was won in that state and nationally by the President Joe Biden. Honk honk. Trump pressured the state's officials to take action that could have overturned Biden's win as part of a similar effort in other swing states whose losses by Trump ensured his defeat in the Electoral College. In an early January 2021 phone call with Brad Raffensperger, Trump urged him to find enough votes to erase Biden's margin of victory, which is not what happened in that phone call. I listened to the full phone call. Thomas, who is responsible for emergency applications such as Graham's issued out of the 11th Circuit, issued the hold on the subpoena on his own accord without referring the question to the entire Supreme Court. The conservative justice said the subpoena would be delayed pending further order by Thomas or the Supreme Court. 2 days before he issued the stay, Thomas told Fulton County, Georgia prosecutors who are presenting evidence to the grand jury to respond by Thursday to Graham's request for a stay of the subpoena. Here's the thing, and I say this to both the MAGA, the right, and the far left. 2020 is over. The left wants to use that as a campaign cudgel to say, election denier, election denier, election denier. And the reason that I structure the show the way that I do and almost never talk about what's going on with Trump or Mar-a-Lago or anything else like that is the fact that right now the big focus needs to be on going forward 2022 and now 2024 after that. Now, if Trump announces his candidacy after the November 8th midterm, then yes, what's happening in Mar-a-Lago will become relevant because there is a good chance that he will become the president. Even though the DOJ is going to do whatever they can to try to subdue the will of the people. Because they like democracy unless you do it that way. To the leftoids. You did it. I don't know if it was legal or not, but you did it. You pulled it off and you won control by the slimmest of majorities in all three chambers of elected Congress. Good job. Have fun. To the right. I appreciate the fact that you were able to come back and get new voting laws on the books to try to shore up and secure some of your elections. But you could overturn every single state tomorrow and turn this into a 535 electoral college vote election. One way. All 50 states could go Trump after you overturn the results in the states that went for Biden. And it still wouldn't put Trump back in office. I mean, there would probably be some questions, and I think there might be a constitutional crisis if you did that, but it still wouldn't put Trump back in office because there is no constitutional measure to change the outcome of the election after Biden put his hand on the Bible and said, I promise to uphold the thing, man. And so help me, that guy up there that I'm probably going to meet soon. As soon as he did that, there was no constitutional measure to go back and change the results of that election. In fact, the next person who would be president, if you did find that he was in there illegitimately, would be Cackle's Kamala Harris. I love this here, and I see this out of the corner of my eye as we're getting ready to move off this one. Representative Mark Pocan of Wisconsin blasted Thomas on Twitter for blocking the subpoena, trying to justify tying it to the justice's wife, Ginny Thomas, who would encourage the Trump White House officials and state legislators to overturn Biden's victories in swing states. No, Mark Pocan didn't do that because he had some moralistic view of Clarence Thomas and Ginny Thomas. Mark Pocan did that because he is a partisan actor in one of the most progressive districts in the country, Wisconsin District 2, that houses Madison. All right, let's grab this one from The View, and I think we actually might have to cut it at that one. From the Daily Wire, The View cuts to commercial break as far-left activists erupt in protest, shout obscenities at Ted Cruz. Why was he there? Well, we can't really say. But he was. ABC's The View cut to a commercial break on Monday during a live interview with Senator Cruz after a far-left activist in the crowd began protesting over climate matters, which eventually turned into somebody shouting obscenities at the lawmaker. Let's watch. And we've got a couple clips of this.
Cause of it, and that is when the federal government spends too much money.
Okay.
We have seen trillions and trillions of dollars spent by Joe Biden and the Democrats. Just last year, the federal government took in $4 trillion in tax revenue. It's the most money in history we've ever taken in. The problem is we spent nearly $7 trillion, and that's what
we do cover climate here, guys. We do cover climate.
Ladies, excuse us. Let us do our job. Let us do our job. We hear what you have to say, but you gotta go.
When Whoopi is telling the few people that are willing to come and listen to this that they need to settle down, it's time to settle down. It goes further.
2 years ago, and I think for the vast majority of Americans, the answer is no.
Come on, guys.
Well, and of course they had to go back and blank some of that out too, because I'm sure that this was the ABC recording off this right off their screen. I wish we could have had a raw cut of that. Moments later, during the same segment, one of the protesters shouted at Cruz, "Hey," before the audio immediately cut out. Cruz looked up and started laughing at the person as the other co-host expressed shock at what was said. A source in the audience told the Daily Wire that the protester yelled at Cruz, "F you, Ted Cruz." He's trying to justify why he went to this. From The Hill, Cruz says he went on The View because GOP needs to reach much more broadly, which they do. I'm not going to lie. From Dominic Mastrangelo. Ted Cruz said he made an appearance on ABC's The View this week because he believes more conservatives need to reach audiences who don't agree with them politically. Was a bit of a circus, Cruz said during an appearance on Fox News in reference to the protesters who briefly interrupted Monday's broadcast of The View. But the reason I went on The View is because I think it's more important that conservatives reach much more broadly than just preaching to the choir. Viewers of the failed daytime talk show have only seen one partisan story the whole time, Cruz said before mocking the hosts for the pointed questioning of him on matters ranging from January 6th to comments about Cruz's wife during the 2016 presidential election. Cruz made a number of media appearances throughout the day, Monday, as he promotes an upcoming book. So, that's what we see coming for Ted Cruz. And I think that we do need to cut off at this point, so we will jump over and do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day. By the way, on the For You, I don't know if they're actually trending right now, but on the For You, the Pride Boys are trending. The Pride Boys aren't up. So let's get to Twitter trending and let's see what it is that Twitter thinks we should be talking about today. Oh, they think we should be talking about Kanye. In the top two trends, which are probably related, Adidas and Yeezys. Adidas has caved after the pressure from Jersey, my wife's son Reliant. Rob Reiner, an hour ago. Now that Adidas has cut ties with Kanye West, it's time for America to cut ties with the anti-Semitic white Christian nationalists, GOP. Vote blue. Adidas just canceled Kanye due to dangerous comments. They say the establishment will always find a reason to cancel you if you go against them. As a company, Adidas has every right to sever ties with whomever. That said, they better pay Kanye. We're not going to witness Kanye's intellectual property be stolen and his life bankrupted while being told black people need to shut up about it or suffer the same consequences. So yes, Adidas is no longer the supplier of Kanye's shoes. Kat Dennings. The world is watching, Adidas. Another one of those that's really hot, but thinks that her opinions matter because she's really, really hot. This one, by the way, I was going to put this on the stack today, but I didn't find it. We might talk about this a little bit tomorrow. Today on the 405 in Los Angeles, honk if you know, Kanye is right about the Jews, and a word that I probably can't say on YouTube. I probably shouldn't even be showing on YouTube up there as well. And I don't buy a second of this, and not in Los Angeles. I mean, there are a lot of weird, crazy people in Los Angeles, but realistically, if a bunch of actual white supremacist Nazis started doing something like this on the 405, a bunch of people from Compton with guns that with questionable legal statuses would be paying them a visit. I'm just saying. And our number 2 trend, of course, is Yeezys, obviously, for the same thing. Y'all kept buying Yeezys after the dude said slavery was a choice. We're not serious about changing anything. Resellers know, knowing Yeezy slides and 350s are going to go up for $10,000 in 2 years after Kanye and Adidas split. Yeah, they'll be collector's items. Adidas should have canceled Kanye after these dumpling-looking Yeezys. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, actually. This one is so stupid. Chica tweets out, okay, but for real, the swift response to Kanye's anti-Semitism versus the silence when he was tormenting the black community is really something to witness. And Sean Skydaddy Combs says, you expect Taylor Swift to stand up for the black community? Where were the black artists at when he said slavery was a choice? Why didn't black consumers stop buying Yeezys? Dude, she wasn't talking about Swift. She wasn't talking about Taylor Swift. She was actually using the real meaning of the word Swift. All right. Now that we've got 2 trends off of that, let's see what else we have going on here. Brittany Griner is trending. Brittany Griner is being transferred to a Russian penal colony where she will spend the next 9 years after losing her appeal. Thankfully, Brittany landed in a place where she won't have to hear our terrible and oppressive national anthem again for the foreseeable future. Oof. Joe Madison says we cannot forget about Brittany Griner. Russian court upholds U.S. basketball star Brittany Griner's 9-year sentence. We'll put a pin in that for tomorrow because we'll talk about that. So, she's going to prison after all. But hey, again, she won't have to hear the national anthem and how oppressive it is. Right? Grivard! Meet Grivard, the ghost dog Pokemon. Grivard is so affectionate that paying it any attention will make it so happy it'll follow you wherever you go. However, Grivard will slowly and inadvertently absorb the life force of those around it. Apparently this is something from the new colors that are coming out, which I might actually look into. I'm not gonna lie, and if I do improve my living situation in the near future, might go grab a Switch and maybe do some streaming off of that. I know I've said that I want to play some of the old Switch game or Game Boy games, including one of those would be the old Pokemon. I generally enjoy the Pokemon franchise. I haven't played any of the new ones. I think I've never gone past Gen 2. But I generally enjoy the concept. And I actually enjoy playing it on stream, even if it is some of the newer ones with the newer graphics. So that's a possibility. It definitely is. But this is one of the new Pokemon that was introduced. It looks like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. And we skip Tuesday Thoughts, Tuesday Inspiration, Tuesday Motivation. So the last one we will do is Things That I Hate at Work. Being there, says Jordan. Things I hate at work, being there. I may need to extend my lunch break into not working here anymore. 10 says meetings that last too long. Scams. Oh, this is one of the anti-work people. Warning, scam alert. Millions of people worldwide have fallen for the 40-40-40 scam. The 40-40-40 scam is where you make someone else rich by working 40 plus hours a week for 40 years, then try to retire on 40% of what you couldn't afford to live off of in the first place. Commonly known as a job. Well, do better. When you clock in at 9, work for 7 hours, and realize it's only 9:30. Yeah, I don't have that actually. My days generally go pretty quick. Home cooks are sexy says, things I hate at work, they expect me to be there. Tragically, you can't work from home as a nurse. The lunch thief. Lunch went missing at work today. Sure hope it goes missing again tomorrow. Nice. I like that. That's funny. Alright, and I think that we're actually going to cut it there. We got 5 trends in here we got to talk about. Oh, there's a strict no drinking policy. That's funny. At one of my jobs, I can drink on the job. You know, I'm usually sitting here when I'm doing it, and you guys kind of encourage it sometimes. Sitting down, playing video games, and throwing back a glass of whiskey or vodka and something. Alright, I think we're done. I think we have to be, because I have to go and do that thing I hate at work. Dom DeLuise is trending. I don't think it's because he passed away, because I'm pretty sure that he's already gone, isn't he? I don't know. Let's head out of here, though. I can sit here and figure that out for the entire rest of the day, or we can head out of here for the day. Where is my outro music? Alright, well, with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted with us and kept us going and kept us on point. Some of the people that are having some fun. Okay, yeah, Hilton said that he died years ago. Oh, good. Well, we've got the commentary out there to make sure that we do have the facts accurate. So, we'll head out of here for the day. We'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and more stuff about the midterms. I anticipate that it's just going to be a solid midterm block for the next, what do we have now? 7 days? No, more than that, because it's November 8th. The next couple weeks at least. So come back and join us for that. It's going to be an interesting time. Definitely looking forward to that as well. We will see you here tomorrow for more news and more headlines then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.